Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on DC Studios and just some possible things that could happen under it and surrounding it and involving it, if that makes sense. So as we head into another pandemic and lockdown in the form of Mpox, obviously, fingers crossed that does not happen. Don't think I could deal with another lockdown. Got my fix back in 2020 and parts of 2021, but I guess in the spirit of lockdowns and not being able to do anything, this was brought up literally in the week leading up to Mpox being talked about more and more. Many were discussing the possibility of DC Fandome returning under the rule of James Gunn and his new DC Studios, not due to another pandemic, but just wanting fandom. Of course, DC Fandome was introduced to us back in 2020, towards the end of the year. I think it was obviously announced earlier, but was it like October or something that we got it? It was around that period of the year at the very least. But of course, this was a major thing in its first year, where a lot of films and TV shows were not filming or had just gone back to filming because things had evened up a bit in regards to like, okay, we know what to do and stuff, and we can actually film, but nothing was ready to be released outside of a handful of things, or things had done filming, but they were still being put together in the post-production. So like Wonder Woman 1984 was one of the things that was ready, which was done, and it was on its way shortly after DC Fandome. We got a lot of promotion at DC Fandome in 2020, and then like the Suicide Squad had filmed, but was still being edited and stuff like that. I think Doom Patrol, and its current season at that time or something, was another show that beat COVID to the finish line and was ready. I can't remember exactly, but there was a couple of different projects, some of which, like Wonder Woman for sure and Suicide Squad as well. But that DC Fandome back in 2020 was received really well. Not fairly well, I would say really well. I'd say, like, honestly, the vast majority of people and fans were happy with it, and it gave fans some stuff to not only enjoy at the time and just watch when they were locked down, with a large variety of panels from TV, film, comic books, games, and just overall DC content, but it also gave stuff for people to look forward to over the year or two to come, thanks to what was presented. And it was like, okay, well, when we can actually do stuff, now we have some stuff to go to the theaters to watch or enjoy at home again, because they're already at home, I guess. But I guess people just look forward to it because they can actually go and make the movies or TV shows and stuff like that. But due to this, many assumed, because it was such a big thing in 2020 and really popular, the DC Fandome would become a mainstay due to not only how popular the 2020 event was, but also some harsher critics were complimentary of it. Like people that normally have like a stick up their you-know-what and just hate everything, they were like, hey, this was pretty decent. Many hoping it would almost become, an annual event for DC, almost like how Disney has D23. Of course, Disney is much more broad, but maybe DC could do something like it. And I was very much in that lane for the most part after the 2020 event. But then the 2021 version of DC Fandome occurred, the sequel, which sort of highlighted the various problems with it, and also some one major problem with it being something that would happen yearly. But then the 2021 version, the sequel of DC Fandome occurred, which highlighted the problem with it being something that would happen yearly. It's like, hey, can this happen every single year? The 2021 version of DC Fandome was, in a nutshell, just a 2-hour, it might have been over 2-hour event for the second trailer, I think it was, for the Batman. Like, that was really it. That was the only thing that really was in that event, in that second DC Fandome. Of course, the first teaser for the Batman was released during the first DC Fandome back in 2020 and was a standout in that event alongside some other stuff. But I think in 2021 at DC Fandome, it was the second, or maybe it was just the first official trailer. But yeah, nothing really of note at all in that 2021 event outside of that Batman trailer. And of course, it was a completely different format where you couldn't go around and choose what you wanted to watch. In the 2020 event, you can go to the website and you click on this panel and watch it after the fact. In 2021, it was just a live feed. It was just a live stream. And you had to watch what they were broadcasting. Obviously, it was much more simple to put together, but it also made it pretty lame, especially because it was just, you had to watch the 2 hours and they knew what their end was going to be. It was going to be that Batman trailer and that was it. Obviously, you can tell by the way I'm describing it, I did not like the 2021 Fandome. I thought it was a massive waste of time. Just release the Batman trailer on its own, or do a dedicated 30-minute live stream with the cast and crew and then show the trailer. Don't bait everyone else in and then just give us that. But to be fair, some people liked DC Fandome 2021. I think it was mainly Batman fans, but at least some people liked it, which is fair enough. You can enjoy what you want to enjoy, I guess. But obviously, after 2021 and that second DC Fandome, there wasn't a push for another holding of DC Fandome. But I don't honestly think that comes down to 2021 being a crumb compared to the big, nice, tasty cake of that initial 2020 event. It was obviously because COVID restrictions were pretty much wiped away and people could just get back to normal ways of life, this including conventions being held like San Diego Comic-Con and the like. But with the introduction of James Gunn and Peter Safran as the co-heads of the newly introduced DC studios, people are wondering, is there a possibility for a DC-focused event like Disney has with D23 to make its way, whether it's called DC Fandome or something else? And to be honest, I'd probably just keep the naming of DC Fandome. I think it's actually a really good name, like obviously like fandom, but then like the dome aspect and stuff like that. I think it's a good name, depending on how you hold the event, I guess. But by like a DC focused event, I mean like it's an in-person event. Like that is what people want. They want something where they can buy tickets if they live wherever it's held, whether it's just always in the one area like D23 is, or it's like the Star Wars one, the Star Wars celebration, where I think that goes around a couple of different locations around the world, some places in Europe, obviously in various places in the United States and stuff like that. Obviously, this is unless another lockdown happens. Then they have to do it online. But people want like an in-person event that maybe has, whether the entire main stuff is live streamed or just aspects are live streamed online as well, for like, if it's held in the United States and someone in England or Australia or Hong Kong or something wants to watch it, they can watch it live stream. But what are the pros and cons going for and against this potentially being a thing? Despite many people wanting it, there has to be some cons to it, obviously. Well, let's go over them. And we will start on a positive note with the pros, and that's mainly because one of the cons I think comes very close to KOing it in regards to fandom happening again, or at least it being DC Fandome. And it doesn't necessarily wipe out any form of this happening, but I think it wipes out what a lot of people want it to, what it's specifically to be. So in regards to the pros, I think the biggest pro for it, and I think it's the standout one, because of course when they have San Diego Comic-Con, of course they're going to be there next year at San Diego Comic-Con DC. And we've seen like, Marvel this year and stuff, and then they went to D23 like a month later or something like that, and they were able to, I guess like spread it out and stuff. But I think if you had DC Fandome specifically, you would be able to have detailed focus on all your upcoming DC Studios projects in particular, big and small. So you can focus on your big ones like your Batman, Brave and the Bold, or whatever it is, your bigger ones. But then your smaller ones, whether it is like the animated stuff within DC Studios, they can get the same amount of time focused on them and being talked about. And it allows, like, it can be spread, like if it's over like a 3-day weekend or something like that, each of those upcoming projects, whether they have a trailer or not, can have half an hour to an hour of stage time with the cast and crew, or whether it's just a crew at that time, like a showrunner or a director or a writer or whatever it is, hyping this stuff up, talking it, and interacting with fans that might have some questions about it, and they can just give an insight into it. Because a lot of the time this stuff stays behind closed doors, which is good, obviously for good reason a lot of the time, but I think also giving some insight into it, which happens at Comic-Cons to an extent, but obviously it's also conducted by a moderator for the most part as well, and they can sort of control it, which you'd want some control on the creative side, but at the same time having a back and forth with the fans I think would be a pretty good idea. But also, as I said, like having that equaled amount of time and focus both on the big stuff as much as the small stuff, I think creates a pretty good, even flow, if you want to put it within the DC Studios lineup. Obviously a big one, and you see this with, I think, like some of the D23 stuff, but I think also specifically with like the Star Wars Celebration stuff, it's growing the brand outside of being highlighted at San Diego Comic-Con. Because the big thing, if you're going to get, like, San Diego Comic-Con is that pop culture thing where even if you just have an okay trailer, it gets a lot of attention just because it's a Comic-Con trailer. So I think if fandom could really, enhance that or embrace that as well, it allows you to grow the brand, and having your own focused thing where it becomes a calendar, like a day or, a weekend or a week potentially on the calendar that is like, okay, well, that's going to be a focus point for stuff that's coming out, which at the moment, if you're at Comic-Con or San Diego Comic-Con, you have to have like a big thing to stand out. And a lot of, like, if they went this year, like, they would have been swept under the rug because of what Marvel did, unfortunately, regardless of what DC announced, just how it is. But you're having this thing, it lets you like stand out a bit. And another big thing is like the second last thing here is in regards to the pros is the comics, the games, and the animated projects get focused in on more outside of DC Studios. So unfortunately, when you have like your Hall H panel next year at Comic-Con for DC Studios, they're not going to mention anything with the comics. They're not going to mention anything with the games, and there's any animated projects, you get oh, by the way, this is also coming out, but we don't have the time to waste. Like, honestly, that's the right term to use. Unfortunately, waste on talking about this. You know, that you can go to ballroom size of a bee's hive or something down there where 3 people can sit inside of it and you can watch the trailer for that animated show. Like, that's just going to happen. So DC Fandome would allow more focus on that. And of course, James Gunn has said there is going to be animated projects and stuff coming out. So that's another thing that would get way more highlighted under an event like this. And the fourth and final thing here is a simple one: community. Like, and I think this maybe more lines up with like the Star Wars Celebration thing, that because like the biggest 2 references I can use are Star Wars Celebration and DC Fandome. Though the one that probably fits more is Star Wars Celebration, because they just do what I'm sort of describing here, but with Star Wars stuff. But I think the community is a big thing. I think the big thing with it, and I sort of mentioned it earlier, is that if they do it, I think locking it down in one location would be an error. I think that would be, and also I think that would, it's just, you know, I think it's just an error. I think you have to spread it around. So one year you have it in LA, then maybe you do New York, and then maybe you do London, then maybe somewhere in Germany, then maybe somewhere in like, I don't know, Southeast Asia, then maybe do it in Australia. Like, you got to spread it around the world, and I think that allows, once again, it plays to that thing I was talking about before about like growing the brand and like this event that travels. But I think community is a big one. But obviously, like, there has to be support behind it from the community to get it going and, I guess, build it up. But that sort of leads into the first con: popularity. Would people show up? That's the biggest thing. Would people show up? Because that'd be the biggest fear about investing money, investing time, investing focus, investing creatives into it. You do it and no one shows up, because that's the big thing. Like, that's a big meme with DC fans, like DC fans online, and it's everyone cheering and stuff like that. And DC fans in the theaters, and the theater's empty. It's the biggest meme out there at the moment when it comes to DC and like fans and like supporting and stuff like that. But I think that plays into moving it around. So I think you'd start small anyway. Like, your first DC Fandome, don't hold it anywhere massive. Like, make it this thing which sells out fairly quickly, but also maybe make it where it is available for people online. Then maybe it's sort of like some stuff's locked behind closed doors. Like, oh, it's the first sneak peek at Lands or something, and only people at the convention get to watch it. But most of the other stuff is released online, or it's live streamed, or whatever it might be. But I think that's the big thing. You'd probably start off small and gradually grow up. I don't know if Star Wars Celebration did that when they first started. I'm not too sure, but I think that'd be the right way to do it. But I think popularity is one of the probably concerns about it. But I think that's something you would have to like manage and let it just flow up slowly. Obviously, another one, and there's these sort of I have the second and third and last one. So the second one and the third and last one, I have 3 cons here. They sort of play into each other. So the first one is quantity year on year. So by this, I mean projects you can actually talk about, and it makes it worth people going. Because the thing is, despite it being like, there might be like a strong community thing when it's going on, if there's not a lot to like watch and like, you know, be caught up in it all at the specific event, would you go? Especially if it's expensive to go, especially if you need to travel internationally to do it, or at least spend time and, you know, pay for accommodation and just, you know, money, just the costs just rack up. Is it worth going if there's not a lot of stuff there? And it's about maintaining that. So then you'd think, oh, would you do it every 2 years for DC Fandome? Would you do it every 3 or 4 years and stuff like that? And then it gets to the point where it's like, is it even worth doing it when you can just show everything at San Diego Comic-Con? And then that plays into the third and last thing, which is the quality year on year. You could have, one year you could have 8 things, you know, 8 movies, TV shows, games, and animated projects, and they're all very high quality. And then next year you'd have 12, but they're all very small things that are really niche that not many people would care about, if that makes sense. And it's about, you know, you don't want to have like one DC Fandome, and let's say it's like 2026 is a really good one, 2027's mid, 2028's mid, then 2029 is good. You don't want to have it very inconsistent where like half the time it's a bit of a dud and it's not even worth going, and you could have just announced all that stuff at Comic-Con or talked about it there. So that would be another issue, is the quantity and quality year on year with DC Fandome. And I think the cons, to be honest, when you include the popularity, the quantity and the quality concerns, arguably outweigh a lot of the pros there. Like, if I was someone making the decision and you're counting the books and stuff like that, you go, it's too much of a risk, man. And we're predicting stuff, like predicting that we're going to have that stuff there. While if you look at D23, it's like, even if Marvel's got like not much to talk about, they can talk about their Disney, their Star Wars, their Pixar, their theme parks and everything like that. And it you know, fills up the roster for D23. But does that mean I don't want anything like this to happen? No. I actually have a solution for this, or I think what could make it work. And it's pretty simple. It's not playing off Star Wars Celebration. It's playing off D23, and that is a Warner Brothers convention. I think that's way more suitable. You think about all the IP that Warner Brothers has. And once again, they might find similar issues to like quantity and quality year on year, but they just have more to pick from. So even if like DC's having a bit of a weaker year, you could have your Harry Potter stuff that comes in, some of the stuff on HBO, whatever it might be, Game of Thrones, for example, or Lord of the Rings, whatever it might be, and they can lift it up. So some IPs or some brands would have stronger years than others, but they help each other out. They help each other out year on year. So, okay, we're a bit light this year. That's okay. We're good. We can help you, show your one decent thing, and we'll show our 5 decent things or something to, spread out the load if you want to put it. So I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know what you'd call it. I don't know. Warner Brothers? I don't know. Warner Brothers convention. I don't know what you'd call it. There's probably some WB. No, you probably wouldn't call it WB23, even though it rhymes. It's probably the same as D23. That rhymes as well, doesn't it? There's probably something that you could do, but I think a Warner Brothers convention makes more sense than anything that you could do that. But once again, it's also the tonal mix. Like, despite everything, Disney overall, regardless of if they have an R-rated show or what, it's mostly family, while Warner Brothers has some very varied things. So I think that's probably the more suitable thing, is like a Warner Brothers based convention than a DC Fandome. But that's if DC Fandome's in real life. If they want to bring DC Fandome back as an online thing, I think that's probably the best way to just have it as DC Fandome and be its own thing. But once again, with no lockdown and stuff, I don't know if the attention would be there. Maybe that played into why 2021 wasn't as good, because things were already starting to get back to normal by then, especially in other countries outside of the US. So yeah, I don't know. It's a wait and see. I'm sure James Gunn and Peter Safran, David Zaslav, all of them have probably thought about it. But I think the risks outweigh the positives as DC Fandome. I think the more suitable thing that actually would work, and I think there's more pros to it, is the Warner Brothers thing. But Warner Brothers might be like, is it even worth it for us? But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. For you to be awesome, if you could drop a like and a show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on this. Would you want to go to DC Fandome in real life, or do you think it'd work better as a Warner Brothers convention? Or would you just want DC Fandome to return as an online thing? What do you want? Let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.